I am Mara Keaton. And today, my son-in-law learned that charm cannot outvote proof. The courtroom was bright and cool, full of the small sounds people make when they are waiting. Logan Price smiled at his attorney like a man rehearsing victory. He thought a decree would unlock my family's vault. My daughter, Sophie Keaton Price, sat 2 rows behind him with her hands clenched. She is a school counselor who believes people can change if they have support. She once believed that about Logan. Today, she watched the truth take the microphone. When the judge finalized the divorce, Logan did not look at Sophie. He looked at me the way a trespasser studies a fence. His attorney rose and asked the court to consider his marital claim tied to my assets. The phrasing was courteous. The target was not. I stood with a plain envelope and steady breath. Inside were copies of my passport stamps, boarding pass, and hotel receipts from Europe. The dates were exact, the times even more exact. Precision is polite when a room expects drama. The bailiff delivered the envelope to the bench, and the clerk logged each exhibit. The court compared the notarization date on the power of attorney to my travel records. Geography started speaking louder than anyone else. Logan's smile dimmed. The judge asked where the principal signer was when that power of attorney was witnessed. The notarization said here. The evidence proved abroad. I did not need rhetoric. Only the distance between 2 stamps. Silence did the arithmetic. Logan bent toward his attorney, as if proximity could change facts. He whispered, then straightened, still wearing the grin that always arrived before consequences. The judge looked at the signature again, then at me, then at the bailiff. The room took one long breath and seemed to lean toward the bench. Detective Brian Calder from Financial Crimes stood near the wall with a notebook and a quiet face. He had reviewed the records earlier and knew the chain of custody by heart. He did not celebrate. He simply waited for the court to catch up to the paperwork. The judge spoke, so the weight would land. The court had a power of attorney that could not have been witnessed by the principal because the principal was in Europe that afternoon. That made the instrument void and suspect for fraud. The clerk's pen stopped moving. Logan tried to talk and stand at once. He called it a clerical mistake. A calendar, a notary who mixed up dates. His attorney tugged at his sleeve like a parachute that would not open. The judge did not invite either one to continue. Relief does not look dramatic, it looks finished. I spent years designing procedures that required my body to be present before any stranger could move my money. Every document in that envelope was intentionally boring. Boredom is a fortress when the other side depends on fog. Detective Calder stepped forward when the judge nodded and advised that probable cause existed for attempted identity theft and elder financial abuse. The cuffs clicked once, clean as a door catching. Sophie exhaled like someone letting go of a burning rope. The judge ordered Logan remanded and instructed counsel to preserve all evidence. The attorney sat down slowly, learning what arrogance never teaches. I thanked the court and returned to my seat. Logan finally looked at me and saw a wall where he expected a window. And he understood the difference between confidence and custody. He believed the envelope was the end of my plan. He did not know it was only the first layer. I have been building the rest for 4 years, carefully enough to survive complaint and weather. Today was not a finish line, it was my starting gun. I did not build a wall, I built a procedure. The first brick was a living trust with a backup trust nested inside it, both requiring my physical presence for any change. The second brick was a verification rule at my bank that refused phone approvals, emails, or video calls. If you wanted my signature, you had to meet my eyes. Every account received the same guardrails, dull on purpose. 2 forms of hard identification. A wet signature watched in person, and a clerk trained to ask follow-up questions when the room felt off. Boredom is a tripwire because criminals worship speed. I wanted Logan Price to trip, not sprint. I created a decoy sub-account that looked useful but never mattered. It held just enough money to interest a man who tests doors, not enough to bankrupt me if he got lucky. I left a paper trail that suggested it was the weakest link. Weak links invite teeth. The bank installed an extra camera on the counter where I sign major documents. The footage pushed to a folder I could request without fanfare. If someone showed up with my name, but not my face, the lens would know. Cameras do not have social lives. They do their job. I told Sophie Keaton Price that I was simplifying my paperwork to make life easier later. She is a school counselor who hears confessions for a living, and she wanted to believe her husband would grow into responsibility. I did not lecture her. I let the quiet do the teaching. Logan kept smiling through holidays, through barbecues, through gentle questions about budgets that he turned into compliments. He learned our routines the way a safecracker listens to pins. He spoke softly about safeguarding family wealth. He never mentioned whose hands he had in mind. He probed the decoy, the way a fox circles a fence. A call went to the bank pretending to confirm a detail about my trust, and the verification rule ended the attempt before it could breathe. The request left a note in the system, and air grew thinner around him. He was mapping my defenses for a later climb. I watched for a leak because precision drains a thief's patience. Tara Quinn glowed whenever Logan texted, and her listings skewed older than her average market. She was Sophie's friend, a realtor who moved fast and smiled faster. I did not accuse, I measured. I wrote a clean email about a fictional client, a widow with a tidy portfolio and a hunger for high-yield products. The details were specific enough to entice and harmless if stolen. I sent it to Tara with a harmless question about downsizing and waited. 12 minutes later, it pinged out of her inbox and into his. Forwarding leaves footprints even amateur can follow. The subject line replicated inside Logan's folder at Halo Capital Group, complete with my planted phone number for direct onboarding. He called that number within the hour to discuss a private placement. He was not careful, he was excited. When temptation nudged, affection did the rest. Sophie opened the shared tablet one evening and found a message thread between Tara and Logan that did not read like business. It hummed with selfies, hotel confirmations, and a dumb joke about signatures being just lines. She set the tablet down like it might burn the table. Sophie came to me with a calm I did not recognize at first. She did not cry, and she did not bargain with reality. She asked me what I needed from her to finish what I had started. We stood in silence long enough to hear the refrigerator hum. I called Talia Morse the next morning. She is a civil litigator who treats paperwork like a pry bar. Her first move was a notice demanding Halo Capital's investor list, subscription agreements, and every document labeled power of attorney, proper names, force liars to choose. Halo Capital Group handed over a neat binder and forgot that neatness does not equal truth. The spreadsheets aligned until they did not. Talia found a shadow ledger that did not appear on the official index. It listed consulting fees and accelerated admin totaling $420,000. Dates tell on people. The withdrawals clustered around the same weeks. Someone tried to use my name to move money I never touched. The pattern screamed louder than any accusation. You don't need melodrama when math keeps receipts. I asked Talia to keep the tone professional and the pressure steady. We did not need a press release, we needed a filing. She sent a preservation letter to lock down devices and email archives and a draft subpoena for the custodian of records. The polite terms for do not even think about deleting. While Talia tightened the civil net, I adjusted the decoy to look a shade more careless. The login sent me alerts from new devices, and the alerts started arriving in the early hours when bravado wakes up alone. He tested 2-factor channels I knew he would despise. He ran into the fence again. Logan met with potential investors using the language of family and legacy. He moved brochures across glossy tables and sold safety as a feeling. He always returned to the same refrain about simplifying complex structures for aging relatives. He was rehearsing for me without knowing it. Tara kept forwarding material that should have died in her inbox. I tracked timestamps like a weather chart. The path from her screen to the Halo server never changed. And neither did the speed. Sophie watched it too, with the same patience she uses with teenagers who think they invented secrets. The bank's camera caught a man delivering a notarized envelope on my instruction. The man did not look like me, and he did not carry my voice. He slid paper across the counter like he was sending a ship out in a bottle. The clerk followed procedure and scanned the ID for verification. The system flagged a mismatch before the conversation ended. The notary stamp was real. The circumstances were not. The jurisdiction matched. The date matched. And the signature tried hard to match. The one detail that never matched was my location on that afternoon. I had proof of being somewhere planes and promises could not bridge in time. Detective Brian Calder walked through each artifact with the discipline of someone who has seen messier jobs. He traced the email routes, the device IDs, the server logs, and the footage clips. He did not need a confession because he had sequence. Sequence is the oldest confession there is. Talia prepared a civil complaint that named Logan and Halo Capital Group for fraud, conversion, and unjust enrichment. She attached excerpts from the shadow ledger and signaled our intent to seek restitution and a constructive trust over assets purchased with stolen funds. Her tone was measured, which is worse for a defendant than anger. Measured means ready. Sophie signed her own affidavit with quiet precision. She described the tablet messages with dates and times, and she attached screenshots the right way, without commentary. She did not add adjectives. Facts prefer noons. Tara sensed the temperature change and texted me from an unknown number. She asked if I wanted proof that could resolve everything in exchange for a promise she could keep her license. I told her to speak to counsel and ended the call. I am not a bargaining counter, I am a record. By then, Logan had started repeating his favorite line about protecting families from complexity. He heard himself as a guardian of order. I heard a man rehearsing a sale to an empty room. Sellers who sell to no one begin to shout. The trap required nothing flashy in the end. It was a table set with dull tools and a chair he chose for himself. Every layer pointed to the next, because that is how traps look when they are honest. Honest traps do not require bait to lie. I slept well for the first time in months because boredom had done its work. The decoy stood. The ledgers breathed. And the email threads hummed like power lines in winter. Logan kept moving toward me, as if motion could erase position. He was almost at the center and did not know it. When the subpoena service landed at Halo's front desk, the receptionist signed and the clock started. Time is a quiet partner that never argues. Talia filed. Detective Calder waited, and Sophie watched with a steadiness that made me proud. We were ready for the next layer to snap shut. The build was not about vengeance, it was about removal. You do not argue with rot, you cut it out and seal the edges. Everything we set in motion had a lawful name and a simple purpose. The purpose was to make pretending impossible. Logan believed he was hunting weakness, but he was walking a hallway with doors that only opened inward. Each step narrowed the choices he thought he had. He could deny, or he could run, or he could reach for one more forged comfort. All three led to the same room. By the time we returned to court, nothing about the case required adjectives. The docket carried the weight for us. He was still smiling when he took his seat. A reflex left over from easier rooms. The smile would not survive what came next. Detective Brian Calder began with calls, not speeches. He connected 6 older victims across 3 states who had stories that matched like carbon copies. Each woman described the same rhythm of charm, access, and disappearance. Patterns make juries comfortable. Their statements moved from suspicion to sequence. Talia Morse organized the files so dates lined up and money paths pointed in one direction. The ledger totals echoed the shadow entries we had already flagged. You could hear the same number knock on 3 different doors. Calder mapped the emails, the device IDs, and the phone pings around key withdrawals. He did not theorize, he arranged. A crime that repeats becomes less mysterious and more mechanical. Mechanical crimes are easier to shut down. Logan Price tried a familiar pivot once he sensed the room changing temperature. He told his attorney he wanted to make things right if the court would keep the picture small. He offered cooperation in exchange for a soft landing. The picture was already wider than he knew. The prosecutor signaled he would consider a plea, but not a bargain with Fogg. Restitution and accountability had to include every victim, not just the one he married. That was the first time Logan looked truly tired. Fatigue is the body admitting the truth before the mouth does. While criminal charges gathered mass, Talia pressed the civil side forward. She filed motions to freeze accounts tied to Halo Capital Group and the personal wallets we had traced. The court granted a temporary restraining order that held the balances in place. Money hates stillness. Tara Quinn felt the stillness and called from a new number. She said she could give me a seed phrase to a wallet that would resolve everything. She asked if she could keep her real estate license in return. I told her to speak through counsel and ended the call. Through counsel, Tara met with the prosecutor for a limited proffer. She handed over the seed phrase and a list of transfers she claimed Logan had ordered. The blockchain did not care about claims. It showed movement, not intention. The wallet resolved to a name that was not Logan's. The name was Tara's, linked through a purchase deed and a vendor invoice paid from that same address. She had taken her own slice while forwarding his bait. Betrayal had layered itself without help from me. Talia prepared an amended civil complaint that added Tara as a defendant. Sophie Keaton Price read the filing in a straight chair at my kitchen table. She did not ask for a break, and she did not ask for revenge to feel like relief. She signed where Talia placed tabs and looked at me calmly. We were protecting others now, not just closing our wound. The next step was the postnup that most people forget until it matters. Years ago, at my suggestion, Sophie and Logan signed an agreement with a bad faith financial conduct clause. If he exploited or attempted to exploit family assets, his claims to marital property would be void. Agreements are quiet until the day they speak. Talia moved to validate the postnup before the court. She attached the pattern, evidence, and the ledger excerpts demonstrating intent and action. The judge read without commentary for longer than comfort. Then the court recognized the clause as enforceable given the record. That ruling pulled the ground out from under Logan's civil claims. He could no longer posture as a husband seeking fairness. He was a defendant facing a wall of facts. Even his posture changed. Shoulders folding as if the chair had shrunk. With the postnup enforced and assets frozen, the civil case turned from argument to arithmetic. Talia sought restitution. A constructive trust over purchases made with misappropriated funds. And garnishment orders that would survive bankruptcy games. Each request had a citation and a reason a clerk could file without confusion. Confusion is where defendants hide. Paperwork is how you turn on the lights. Calder updated the victims together on a secure call. They asked hard questions and listened the way people do when they have carried fear for too long. He told them what to expect. If Logan entered a plea, he promised them nothing except the truth. Tara's counsel tried to negotiate a disciplinary outcome that would spare her license. The record did not bend that far. The transfers, the forwarding trail, and the timing of her outreach formed a picture that would not soften in the light. Consequences always arrive late, and then all at once. Logan returned to court with a different expression. The one men wear when they have finally counted the days. The prosecutor outlined charges for identity theft, Wehre, Fraud, and elder financial abuse. A plea discussion followed at counsel table. Hushed but plain. Pleas are not poetry. They are math with handcuffs. Sophie stood in the back with a stillness that used to belong to me. When the court recognized the civil restraints and took note of the post-nup ruling, she did not smile. She exhaled. The way people breathe when an elevator settles at the right floor. Ground is a luxury after you have been falling. I kept my focus on sequence, not satisfaction. Post-nup first. Freezes second. Amended complaint third. Then the criminal plea if it came. In my head, each step had a drawer and a label. Labeling is not cold. It is how you keep fear from running the room. Logan's counsel asked for time to finalize terms that would include restitution and bars on financial employment. The prosecutor agreed to consider it so the victims would not have to testify. A heavy case can still choose mercy without forgetting memory. Memory is the ledger no court can close. By the end of that day, no one in the courtroom mistook charm for character. The alliance of victims stood taller in the hallway, and the paper trail sat in the record like a spine. We had not shattered him, we had removed him. Removal is what justice looks like when it grows up. The sentencing hearing was brief, but the air carried the weight of 4 years. Logan Price stood between two deputies, thinner than memory and stripped of his practiced grin. The judge reviewed the plea agreement, his tone dry and exact. 22 years in state prison, restitution to every documented victim, and a lifetime bar from any financial profession. The numbers landed like quiet stones. Restitution covered the $420,000 from the shadow accounts, the fees, and the fabricated investments. Every dollar would move toward those he had treated as targets. Money returning to its rightful owners is a slow apology, but it speaks clearly. Talia Morse confirmed that the civil orders matched the criminal terms. Garnishment would follow him into any employment, any trust, any inheritance. There would be no new start under another name. Even bankruptcy cannot wash the kind of theft that leaves fingerprints on people instead of paper. Tara Quinn faced her own ruling later that afternoon. The real estate board suspended her license for 10 years, and the court ordered her to repay her share to the victim fund. She did not look for sympathy and found none. Regret is quieter when it arrives too late. Halo Capital Group dissolved on her investigation. Its remaining partners accepting administrative sanctions. The shell company folded like cardboard left in the rain. Sophie Keaton Price attended the last hearing with calm resolve. Not vengeance. Justice. For her, looked like stillness rather than applause. Detective Brian Calder closed his notebook for the final time in our case. He told me that the victims had already received partial restitution and that new training programs would use this case as a model. I thanked him because gratitude, unlike debt, is voluntary. He smiled once and walked away. When it was over, I stood outside the courthouse steps and let the cold wind settle. Logan had spent years convincing people he could manage risk. Now he would live in a place where risk managed him. Some lessons require walls. I did not feel triumph. I felt balance returning. Revenge is only art when it restores proportion. Justice is slower, steadier, and far more permanent. The system had taken its time, but in the end, no one escaped. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it struck a chord or reminded you of your own battles, share your thoughts. Below your voice matters here. Don't forget to subscribe for more true-to-life stories of justice, strength, and redemption. Until next time, Take care of your peace.